Welcome in to the Mile High Hoops podcast with me, Jake Shapiro. Thank you for tuning in, and please like and subscribe to all our content on YouTube, Denver Sports 1043 The Fan. We're doing some awesome stuff over there, covering all the teams in town. Today, we're talking about where the Denver Nuggets stack up in the NBA right now after their first 10 games of the season. They've had a couple days off in a row now, and the rest of the league has been playing. I've been watching the rest of the league. I've watched at least a game of every single team in the NBA at this point in the season, and I'm going to tell you where I think all of them rank right now. We're going to do NBA tiers list from bottom to top. On today's show, I've got some more notes as we get towards the top because I think more people are interested in the better part of the NBA. And hint, hint, the Denver Nuggets are closer to the top of the NBA than they are the bottom. So let's look at the bottom. And this is my seventh tier of teams in the NBA right now. And these are just the guys, the teams tanking for Cooper Flagg blatantly. There's some teams up above this tier that are also going to be in the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes, but these are the teams that aren't even trying to compete, don't have the roster in place, or maybe aren't, putting it out on the floor, whether it's from ownership or the general manager or the coach. And for me, the worst team I've seen, and the Denver Nuggets have beaten them twice, is the Toronto Raptors. And I have them below the Utah Jazz, who I know have a worse record. And again, this isn't going to be record-based because the Jazz are 2-8 and the Raptors right now are, look, the NBA standings have changed. They're 2-10. But the Jazz were really struggling out of the gate. And the reason why I have the Raptors below the Jazz is irregardless of record. It's more based off the fact that, yeah, they've got Scotty Barnes, but it doesn't seem like they have a roster and an idea in place of young guys and what they want to do. I watched the Jazz the other night, who I have at 29 above the Raptors, and you've got Isaiah Collier out there making some really nice plays. I really liked him at USC. You've got Cody Williams from Colorado playing a lot of minutes for them. Keontae George, the Baylor guard, looks like he could be something. I always liked him in college. Last year, I thought he had some really nice moments. Appears to be a good deep range creator, like can get that shot off from deep and also make some nice passes. And in conjunction with Colin Sexton, who I've always liked as a player, and I think they've done some nice things together as a ball-handling duo. And then you've got the Lauri Markkanen thing hanging over all of this. And Lauri right now is still a better player than Scotty Barnes is. He's the best player on either of these two teams. And I like a lot of the parts on this Jazz team, to be honest, despite the fact that I've got them ranked 29. And I think whoever gets the fire sale bits of the Jazz and the Raptors, and there's another team I'm going to mention a little bit, that's going to be a successful team towards the trade deadline, adding one or two pieces from some of these teams. And I think the Raptors ultimately have more players that are going to impact maybe this year's NBA playoffs. Bruce Brown. But I do think the Jazz have more players in place right now long-term that should be a part of their future. I didn't even mention Walker Kessler, who I adore as a backup center, and I think he should probably be starting somewhere in the league. But again, the Jazz situation is just kind of a mess. I cannot wait to see who tries to put themselves into the John Collins sweepstakes. That'll be interesting. So that's the seventh tier. Sixth tier, starting from the bottom of the tier, we've got Portland. Shadon Sharpe looked really good last night. They've got that weird thing with the guards and Anthony Simons and, Scoot. And what do they do with that? I'm looking at their front court, right? I've always been a DeAndre Ayton guy. He's expendable. And so is Rob Williams. Because if you've got Donovan Clingan playing that way, like he did last night, 8 blocks, he might be the best big that comes out of that draft last year. He might be the best player that comes out of the draft last year. And, if you've got Clingan and if you can find a way to salvage Scoot and Clingan could be a really good duo for them. And again, I like Shadon Sharpe out on the wing. So there's some positivity there, but this is ultimately a really bad basketball team. And shouts to Chauncey, but I think he's going to lose his job by the end of this year because that team seems directionless. And, you've got some good pieces again on that team that aren't even playing like Jabari Walker, my guy, but not a team that is going to do anything real this year, but there is some positivity there. Whereas last year, towards the end of the season, it was just like, let's see if what DeAndre Ayton is and just lose a bunch of games. At least to start, they're doing some things positively. Right above that, I've got the Washington Wizards, who Jordan Poole, 40-burger and a loss last night. Not really anything to say about the Wizards. They're completely directionless as a franchise, and Sarr looks okay, I guess. The Spurs I've got right in front of them. San Antonio, Wemby, 50 points last night, first 50-point game. Starting off his second year really poorly, so it was nice to see him get that 50-point game. A lot of it has had to do with the shooting. I think he's just taking a lot of shots, pull-up threes, shooting from really far away comparatively to how big he is. And I thought them getting Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes maybe not known as the playmaker, and obviously Chris Paul, one of the best in the NBA's history. I thought them adding those two guys would help just get the ball to Victor Wembanyama in better spots. And I think part of this process right now is trying to figure your teammates out a little bit. And like Jeremy Sohan didn't even play last night. He almost got into a fight on the bench. So there are some pieces with this team that are kind of just floating around right now. But not a good start for Wemby until last night. And they're in the 6th tier, which is rebuilding all of those group. 5th tier, right above it. This is funny because I'm calling it the play-in tier. And there's so many East teams in this that there are going to be East teams that aren't play-in teams, whether they fall out of the playoffs or maybe they just get straight in, because there are so many East teams that are kind of that fringy, are we going to tank? Are we going to accidentally end up with 35 to 42 wins and play a singular game for our season before getting swept by Boston or Cleveland? So we start this tier with the Charlotte Hornets. I do not have much to say about them. Brandon Miller looks good to start the year. LaMelo Ball, I think, is a solid player. I like some of the pieces in Charlotte. They have a legitimate shot at the play-in. You go to another team, Brooklyn Nets, and I think Charlotte will probably end the season with a better record than the Brooklyn Nets, but the Brooklyn Nets have been a little bit better to me so far this season. I think Ben Simmons looks pretty solid already this season. Like, not the all-NBA player he once was, but that's an interesting piece, and this team is just full of parts. Some of the buzz I've personally heard is based off the amount of draft picks Brooklyn has from their sell of, Kyrie, KD, and, Harden and all those guys. This could be a dark horse Giannis Antetokounmpo team to watch if the Bucks decide to go that route. I'm not sure that that's going to happen this year, but Brooklyn is a suitor. And they've got a lot of parts, and they're going to try and get more draft picks, and they own their own draft pick this year. It behooves them to tank because of that deal they made this offseason to get their own draft pick back unprotected. So they're going to be a Cooper Flagg team for sure. Above them, I've got the Detroit Pistons, who new coach, JB Bickerstaff. Obviously in Denver, we're not the biggest Bickerstaff fans, but I thought he has done it's been night and day because he's a competent NBA coach. And Monty Williams clearly did not want to be coaching the Pistons last year. Jaden Ivey's playing a lot more. I really like some of Isaiah Stewart's stuff. He's just got to stop getting kicked out of games. Cade really, really cares, and I respect it. And he's a good player. They've just got so many different pieces. And then they've got some weird, Tobias Harris is here. And, what do we do with that? They're in a weird position as a team, and they're still in the figuring it out stage. But, given their start to the season at 5-8, which in the East is good enough right now to be in the play-in picture, I could see them being a legitimate 10 or 9 seed in the East. And that would be kind of cool to see, given how bad and sad it was last year for the Detroit Pistons. Right above them, I've got their, sisters from across Lake Michigan, the Chicago Bulls, who I think are playing just extremely hard. A lot of energy with that team. I don't know if DeRozan leaving has just opened up some minutes for some guys, and they're playing a little bit harder. Nikola Vucevic looks like a version of himself that we haven't seen since Orlando. I've always liked Vucevic's game, and when he plays like this, he creates a lot of things for other players. Levine has had a pretty good start to the season. I like Ayo Dosomo. I like Zach LaVine. There are some guys on this team that are solid NBA players. They just don't seem to have a real identity besides they're going to play very, very fast and maybe inefficiently. So if you play fantasy basketball, play anyone that's playing the Chicago Bulls is what I would tell you. But again, given the situation in the East, the Bulls right now are actually in the playoffs. They're the 6th seed as of today. Yeah, it would be nice to be in the East. Miami Heat have completely fallen off a cliff since we saw them here in Denver in the finals. We saw them play in Denver last Friday night, so 6 days ago. Jimmy Butler looks a little old and slow. Tyler Hero looks like a guy that's never fulfilled his promise, and Bam Adebayo is carrying a giant weight on his shoulders, and he looks pretty good in doing it. I do not think that their trade for Terry Rozier has paid off the way that they wanted it to, and I do not like their depth. And then you have all of a sudden Eric Spoelstra making one of the very few coaching mistakes of his career the other night, Tuesday, with the timeout, and the Pistons end up winning that game because of it. I just don't like the vibes in Miami right now. And they've got a lot of talent on that team. And they're probably still going to end up in the postseason some way. But do not like the vibes over there. Right above them, a team they constantly are fighting with in the Southeastern Division, Atlanta Hawks. Really interesting in my mind. A couple of the guys that they got in the DeJounte Murray trade, I thought have been really solid to start the season, including Dyson Daniels. I've always been a Daniels fan, but you're seeing, that long frame and the ability to hustle around. He adds a lot defensively to a team that desperately needed some defensive help. Clint Capella looks absolutely cooked, but Okongwu looks like a guy who's a capable starting center in the NBA. He's shooting some threes, which is kind of interesting too. The most interesting thing about the Atlanta Hawks, though, in my mind, as we finish off the 5th tier play-in tier, Jalen Johnson is the 2nd most touches in the NBA behind Nikola Jokic. Something to watch. We'll see how that develops over the course of the season. So 4th tier, I'm calling this the playoffs. Yay. A lot of teams that aren't going to be happy to just be in the playoffs, and a lot of teams that are just going to make the playoffs and not go any further. There's a lot of similarities with these teams, and I'm just going to rattle off 19-18-17, which is Clippers, Bucks, Pels, because the same thing's going on with all 3 teams. What do we know about what's going on with Kawhi? The superstar in question in Milwaukee is Giannis Antetokounmpo, because he is so good and the team is so bad. And the Zion situation in New Orleans continues to deteriorate as the days go by. I actually really like what I've seen out of James Harden with the Clippers to start the season. I like that little duo they have with Norm Powell. It was fun watching Norm Powell play Philadelphia a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago. And Norm Powell clearly thinks he's a better basketball player than Paul George. And he was going at Paul George, and that was awesome. I don't think that team ultimately has enough to do anything in the playoffs, but seemingly they should be able to get in because they're better than teams like, Portland and New Orleans and Utah. Milwaukee I've got right above. Watched Giannis last night. Unstoppable. Save the Milwaukee Bucks from a really bad loss against the Pistons. And I say really bad loss because the way that game went down. At one point in that contest, I think Giannis had 9 field goal makes and the rest of his team combined had 0. I don't remember what he finished with. It was like 60. Maybe it was like 59. Whatever. You get the point. It was the Giannis Antetokounmpo show. And clearly the Dame Giannis thing is not working. But they still haven't gotten Middleton yet. And I think it's just a wait and see a little bit with that's their last remaining hope before they really just pick up the panic button and fully do something crazy. But this team reeks of panic. And I'm curious what happens because you can't fire Doc Rivers. You're only trading Giannis if he asks out. Do you move Dame? Do you move Brook? Do you move Bobby Portis? Middleton has no value? So that's one of the most interesting situations in the league right now. And they truly suck, unfortunately, because Giannis is so good. And a lot of people have compared Milwaukee and Denver. I think they're two different teams right now. The records will tell you that. But just the fact that they won a championship title, with the star and the core is kind of eroded, matches for both, right? So I get why people think that, but for me, it's not that. Lakers, I've got it 16th. Did you know the fourth best offense in the NBA right now is the Los Angeles Lakers? And LeBron James is shooting 46% from three. Did you know? Pretty crazy. I don't know how sustainable it is. Watched them battle Memphis last night. LeBron's incredible. I still think you need a little bit more from Davis, who's looked pretty solid to start the season. I want Davis to be the best player on that team, not LeBron, if the Lakers are going to be successful. What LeBron's doing at this age, there's really not much to say about it. It's just incredible. I watch it all the time. I marvel at it. And as annoying as the Lakers coverage is from ESPN and everyone else out there, it is fun to watch LeBron James play basketball still, and he is just incredible, and he continues to get better at outside shooting as his athleticism wanes a little bit, and that's the transition he needed to make. We all knew he would need to make 10, 15 years ago, and he's done it to become the most viable player at his age in the history of the league. They're shooting a lot of free throws. It's Los Angeles Lakers. They get calls. Right in front of them, I've got the Sacramento Kings at 16 or 15. DeMar DeRozan off to a good start. They're hanging around. They're in the top 10, I think, in both offense and defense, but not blowing anyone away. I don't know that they really are going to win a playoff series. I think it's interesting because their usage rate has gone away from Domantas Sabonis a little bit and towards DeRozan. So as their playmaking hub changes, how much does that change their offense is my big question right now with Sacramento. And, Malik Monk has dealt with an injury, and Keegan Murray, looks decent at times. I've got questions about this team, and they're a team to me that was a little panicky towards the end of last season. And this year, they have to win a playoff series or else they're going to have to break some things up out there in Sacramento. Next tier could do damage. The third tier. Start with Indianapolis. Right now, they are 16th in offense. They were one of the best offensive teams in the league last year. So that's an eye-popping number. Really alarming. Giant step back. I do not know what Tyrese Halliburton is right now. I don't know if he's the MVP candidate. Clearly not right now. I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 player in the league. I thought he was at one point. I don't know if he's just kind of an all-star. And ultimately, their floor raiser and ceiling raiser is just going to be Halliburton and how good of a player he is. He's still very young. I'm not doubting him. I'm just saying that's kind of the situation they're going through right now. I liked the Siakam ad at the time. I think they have missed Buddy Hield since he has left because that movement shooting was really beneficial to their offense. I'm a big fan of Benedict Mathurin, getting him back, and that's a guy who didn't play last year in the Eastern Conference Finals because he was hurt. I still think they've got a lot to figure out over there, but I ultimately think they're a team that probably is going to win a playoff series. The Orlando Magic I have right ahead of them. And Orlando's looked not good since Paolo got hurt, but when they had Paolo to start the season, they looked like they were going to be an absolute train. So give me a second on that. We'll see. Right now, they're second in defensive rating in the NBA, which is unsurprising for a team that has Suggs, KCP, and Isaac getting serious minutes, but that's what they're going to be built off of. Did you know that so far for the Orlando Magic, who have played 13 games, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has only been in double figures 3 times. Just watch out, because I think the Orlando Magic fans thought they were getting a different player than the one they signed. Number 12, we've got the Rockets. Jalen Green clearly has taken another step up in his game. I still think they need to figure out exactly what their identity is as a team, whether they're going through Green or Sengun. Sengun, nasty dunk last night. Love the way he plays basketball as a Nikola Jokic fan, just kind of Jokic light in a lot of ways. They are third in defensive efficiency. Asir Thompson and Tari Eason out on the wings, creating trouble. They've got some guys deep on their bench that are not playing much. Steven Adams, Jayshawn Tate. They could do a consolidation trade at the deadline. Right above the Rockets at 11, I've got Memphis. All I've got to say is J Huff, baby. J Huff. They've got too many injuries to figure out right now. Not sure how to get a read on them. And above them, number 10, Philadelphia. Also in this could do damage tier. Have no idea what to think of this team right now. It looks like Jared McCain was an absolute awesome draft pick. He was fantastic last night for Philadelphia, but they're also not playing any centers because Andre Drummond and Joel Embiid were hurt in that game. And Reggie Jackson was getting serious minutes down the stretch, and that looked about as well as it did last year in the second half of the season. They have not had a single game yet where Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid have been on the floor together. Even though they have started horribly at 2-9, they still, to me, are the 10th best team in the NBA. And given how bad the East is, they should be able to sneak back into the 5-6 picture. And I need to judge it once those 3 guys come along, because they're the only team in the NBA really going for a big 3 approach. So I need to see it before I judge it. Golden State, exact opposite. They're playing 13 guys right now. 13 guys on their team have played more than 100 minutes so far this season through 11 games. And they are shooting the absolute heck out of the basketball. They are rebounding. They have a lot of energy. They are going to need to tighten up this rotation at some point, and I do wonder if the energy wanes when that happens. Steph Curry looks unbelievable. That game against Dallas the other night, him and Clay going back and forth. You see how good of a player Steph is still, and, top 10 player in the league still at this age, which is just incredible. And it was really fun to watch. Draymond doing a little bit more offensively. Andrew Wiggins looks more like that all-star starter we saw from a couple years ago. Okay, second tier, and these are the contenders. We're going to start at 8 with Minnesota. And to me, they have been the biggest fallers of the NBA season thus far. They lose back-to-back games to the Portland Trailblazers the last 2 nights, and now are 6-6 on the season. I was watching the game at Ball Arena on Monday night that they played, in which they had 3 chances at the end of that game to close it out. The first play, Julius Randle inbounding the ball to Anthony Edwards. Julius Randle wants the ball back after he passed it. He is sulking on the right wing. Does not get the ball back. They get to stop, the Miami Heat do. Spoelstra draws one of his classic ATOs where Nikola Jovic just gets a free run at the basket. Horrible foul. And one. Minnesota now down, has to answer. And Miami has a foul to give. They give the foul. They couldn't do anything on that play. The Minnesota Timberwolves couldn't. And then for some reason, without any timeouts left, the Timberwolves say, okay, Anthony Edwards, you are going to inbound this basketball. Gives it to Mike Conley. Mike Conley didn't know what to do with it. Hucked it up. Didn't hit the basket. And Julius Randle over there in the center of the court screaming for the basketball does not get it. I'll say what I said at the start of the year. If your basketball team has Julius Randle on it, it is not serious. And he has looked good at times, but I just don't think that that's going to pan out in the way that they want it to. And I saw some people in Minnesota last night that I trust talking about, is it time to panic for the T-Wolves? And right now, Anthony Edwards has upped his threes per game to 12 a night. That's where their floor spacing is coming from. Ultimately from their best rim finisher is where their floor spacing is coming from. I do not see that as a recipe for success. A couple more things to watch out with that team. Dante DiVincenzo has not gotten off to a good start. And Rudy Gobert, is this the beginning of the end? He's declining a little bit with his numbers. And I've got some questions about Rudy Gobert moving forward. Okay. Ahead of them is the Dallas Mavericks. I'd actually have them higher, but they just played a really tough run of schedule, lost a couple games, including that game that was awesome on Monday against the Denver Nuggets. My takeaway from that is that they are super dynamic. Kyrie looks fantastic right now. Best he's looked in years, maybe since like the first Boston year or the last Cleveland year. And they get a lot of steals because they are super athletic and they've got a lot of speed out on the perimeter. I think that this is going to be a very successful team this year. I now understand a little bit more why they were playing in the Western Conference Final after seeing them last year. The Nuggets only played them in the first half last year, didn't get to see them at Ball Arena after they made that turnaround with the trades at the deadline. And that game on Monday night was without a couple of those guys, PJ Washington and Derek Lively, who had really stepped up in the playoffs. So I'm excited to see that game next Tuesday, next Nuggets home game, when the Nuggets play the Mavericks, because I think we're going to learn a lot in that first NBA Cup game. Ahead of them is the New York Knicks, one of my finals picks. Cat looked awesome last night. He is leading the team in scoring. And yes, his interior defense has been so bad that no one is shooting. No, there's no player in the NBA defending the paint worse than Karl Anthony Towns right now. But I'm interested to see how that looks once they get Mitchell Robinson back, who's just an absolute load down low. It looks like they're settling in, and I think a lot of people have forgotten that this is like basically a brand new team. OG Anunoby came in last year at the deadline, didn't play much. Mikal Bridges comes over, in the offseason with Karl Anthony Towns. So I think they've still got a lot to figure out, but you see Cat finally for the first time in his career. Yeah, Conley's a real point guard, but just he didn't have the ball as much because of Edwards and not the same level of his career. You see Cat with a real deal point guard in Brunson and how well it's paying off. And I've been really impressed with that. They are fourth in the NBA right now in offense. So something to watch there. Ahead of them, I've got the Phoenix Suns, who are off to a terrific start at 9-3. Durant is hurt right now. He's been their best player. That's going to slow things down. Tyus Jones has been the ad that they all thought it was going to be. They are shooting a lot of threes, including Yusuf Nurkic, who is shooting some threes. I really thought Budenholzer would make this team be the best version of itself. It appears that that is the case. Some of their underlying numbers point to the fact that they might not be as good as their record indicates. I will be watching them closely over the next stretch of games. The Nuggets will meet them twice in December on Christmas and right before that as well. So that's when we'll finally get to see them. Okay, at 4, this answers the question. This is where I have the Denver Nuggets. So right now, they are first in free throw attempts in the NBA. They have a net rating of 2.7, which is horrible for how good they are. The teams all around them have 11-plus net ratings. They are second in the NBA in three-point shooting percentage and are shockingly 6th best in pace. So this is a team right now, the Denver Nuggets, and I talked about this on Tuesday, that is playing very fast. They're super athletic comparatively to what they've been the last few years. And without Jamal Murray, who slows things down, and instead with Russell Westbrook, who speeds them up because of that couple game absence, you're seeing the numbers pay off in the pace where they're just getting a lot more offensive possessions than they had the last year because Jokic likes to play so methodical. I think that number is going to come down a lot. I don't think they're going to continue to be the second best three-point shooting team in the league, just looking at the personnel. I do think that there's a world in which they still end up being a top 5 free throw shooting team. So this next 3-game stretch where Denver plays Memphis, and New Orleans, I'm looking to see if they can still keep that free throw shooting number up. And what do the threes look like? They're still not shooting that many threes per game. That is something that is concerning, but ultimately they have the best player in the world. And that's what's bolstering them. Ahead of the Nuggets, still in the contender tier 2, I've got the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are undefeated to start the season at 13-0. Donovan Mitchell is awesome And last night, he was fantastic. I cannot wait to see them play Boston on Tuesday. That game is going to tell us a lot. Ultimately, I don't think that I'm going to put the Cavs above the Boston Celtics in any tier list until the playoffs occur, no matter what the Cavaliers' record is. And they're just shooting really well. They've got a really solid net rating at 11, tied for second in the league with Boston. They're beating up on some of the bad teams. They're taking care of business. I want to see them against Boston. I want to see them against some of the teams in the West. Darius Garland has obviously taken a leap up, and you're starting to see finally Mobley and Allen figure out how to play together. Karis LeVert has done some nice things as well. Okay, tier 1. These are the title contenders, the title favorites. We were already in the contenders. These are the favorites. At number 2 in the NBA, I've got the Oklahoma City Thunder. Top of the league with a 12.4 net rating. One thing to sneakily watch with them is they were a really bad rebounding team last year. Isaiah Hartenstein, who's yet to play for them, their big free agent acquisition, he is coming back soon. But right now they are without him, Chet Holmgren, their other big man, and Jalen Williams, the big, meaning they are very small. Their rebounding number has actually gotten worse to start the season. Another thing to look out with the Thunder, they had every single player on their team hit historical marks from 3 last year. Their three-point shooting has come down quite a bit to start this season, including that of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which is opening up a lot of things. I know Isaiah Hartenstein can shoot, but he's not going to stretch the floor the same way Chet Holmgren can. So how does this team look in integrating Hartenstein? I wouldn't be surprised if they go through a little bit of a rough patch over the next month or so when Hartenstein is able to come back. Number 1, the Boston Celtics. Don't have anything else to say. They're fantastic. They just won the championship. They look still like the championship winning team. The one thing I'll continue to say about the Celtics is, will they be the first team to get to the conference final after winning a title since the prime Golden State Warriors under Steph Curry? All right, so that's where the Denver Nuggets stack up in the NBA. That is my current tier list from around the league. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Denver Sports, where I will be going over the NBA at little benchmark points. 10 games in seems like a nice little benchmark point. We'll be doing this later on, and we'll be focusing on the Denver Nuggets come again on Tuesday after they play a couple road contests. We'll see if that home energy continues out on the road. I'm Jake Shapiro. Make sure you follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky. We've got a little Nuggets community over there that's growing. It's a fun time. And you can check out my article today on the denversports.com website about Nuggets new city edition jerseys. We've got pictures as well. Thanks for tuning in.